there's been so much media speculation about what happened with Qin Gang. What do you make of just the lack of information that we had in the past month about his whereabouts and now this abrupt change?
Well, the only thing that's actually been broadcast is this idea that he was in fact sick, that there were health reasons behind this. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation, but you have to remember, China's diplomacy is, it's driven by game theory, think tank analysis, strategic alignment with its economic and political objectives, not personalities. So, who the foreign minister is perhaps less important than the country's objectives and policies. The most a minister can do is add an ability to accurately read situations, and they bring a personal style. So at this juncture, you can see the markets are not reacting to that, neither the PBOC or the FM. So at this point, it's just a question of wait and see what information is released.
Einar, David here. Does it matter then, well, let me get your thoughts on this. Does it matter the reasons that he stepped down or that he's no longer in place? And obviously there's an information vacuum. One of the reasons that perhaps could be important is, do you think that in some way signals some disagreement within Xi Jinping's top team?
No, I doubt that. I mean, there was a meeting yesterday that was it was basically an organizational human resource meeting, and that's where the action was taken. Xi Jinping was not presiding over it. At most I can see is it signals a change in overall direction, or they wanted a different personality there. Remember, if you start looking at this, the economy and the relationship with the United States are the two most important things. China is well known for fine-tuning its policies as they go along. I wouldn't read too much into these changeovers. As you can see, nothing has really changed. The seasoned previous foreign minister has taken over, although it might be just a stopgap. Somebody else might be coming in later. But China is a bureaucratic machine, very, very deliberate, step by step. So this isn't going to matter a lot in terms of any kind of policies.
But this Qin Gang was handpicked by the president himself. I'm just wondering, is this a bit of a setback for the president in some ways? Does it carry risks, given that it was also seen as his elevation, Qin Gang's, over more senior, more veteran sort of ministers was part of the sort of these sweeping personnel changes to really put more of the loyalists of Xi on his team?
Well, there's a couple of things that sometimes people get wrong about China. First off, this idea of loyalists. They're all loyal to the party, so they're all part of one group. They might have slightly different views and approaches on things, but it's all about a team effort. Second, this is not like the United States or Great Britain, where the personality of the minister is going to have a great effect, that they're going to bring in their own agenda. Every single one of these guys is, basically they have, daily, weekly meetings where everything is discussed. And as I said, they use these think tanks and game theory, and it's a lot about it's just harmonizing these desired objectives. And that's an ongoing issue. So I think people are reading a lot too much into this. This is not about Xi Jinping. This is really just about getting the job done. And ultimately, that is the responsibility of the party. If they can't produce results, then it's going to fall back on the standing committee's plate. If they're able to do it, the personnel changes don't really mean that much.
Which, to your point, this week's Politburo meeting and really the economy taking center stage and them being able to deliver prosperity and growth was really the most important. Einar, if nothing changes, and as China obviously opens up and continues to speak very recently with many of its major trading partners, what do the trading partners need to think right now when you look at a person like Wang Yi, for example, who's not exactly a stranger, obviously?
Well, that's exactly the point. I mean, China always goes for stability. They're not one of these groups who likes to pop up with a bunch of surprises. And this is not ruled by tweets, as in some other countries. It's very deliberate. They've sent a very strong message that they may be adjusting internally, but everything basically remains the same. The outreach is going to continue to be there. The question is who's going to do it, and who's best qualified to fulfill that role.
But does this whole incident in some way, I know I keep trying to ask the question, but this is coming at a time where China is trying to win back investors. And does it further just add to the concerns about transparency, the data gaps, the policy shifts that we're seeing at a time when people are questioning whether to come back into this market or not?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype going on there. I mean, if you read the narrative that's coming out of the U.S. government and some other governments, they're saying that, oh, you shouldn't trust China. China is looking at this in terms of kind of tit for tat. What's going on in the U.S. Especially. The U.S. is saying, look, we don't want you taking any of our data. We're going to restrict any kind of investment in your high-tech sector. We're reviewing all of the people that you have here in the United States as somewhat questionable, potential spies and things like that. This is shades of McCarthy. So, China is struggling to respond to that. But if you start looking at the global South, areas where China has very good trade ties. Remember, there are 120 countries where they're the major trading partner. That is very open. Really, we're concentrating a lot on the relationships with Europe and the United States. Those are unsettled because of other issues, whether it's sailing ships up and down the Taiwan Strait or this kind of economic and political pressure. So it's not going to be easy to separate those, but quite frankly, they're trying to send the signal that they're open for business. Generally, they're not trying to undermine their own policies. That's where this homogenization of all this stuff comes together.